United States Senator Cory Gardner, as I told you earlier in the show, today begins the Big Five negotiations between Senate Majority Leader McConnell, the president's team, probably led by Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, Speaker Pelosi, and yes, Kevin McCarthy and Chuck Schumer. Cory Gardner, good morning. Welcome, Senator. How are you feeling? Are you in quarantine?
Hey, good morning, Hugh. I'm feeling great. I'm feeling fine. I am in quarantine. I met with a Coloradan who apparently was showing symptoms while in my office, and as a result, I got a call from the state health or from a local health department saying I need to quarantine. So here I am, but I feel fine, no symptoms, doing great.
How are you participating in the fashioning of the most important piece of legislation of your entire career?
By being on the phone, being on email, and conference calls and Skype constantly. Yesterday, I found myself charging my cell phone almost the entire day because I was just burning the battery and making sure that we get the right language, the right adjustments for Colorado, and how we are doing to get this country, once this period is over, back on track.
Now, Senator, I'm trusting because you are a well-informed American that you've read both of my columns on the stimulus bill in the Washington Post. And if you haven't, you can go just Google Hugh Hewitt in Washington Post and read the
Very
last
good
two
on
columns.
my list. That's right.
All right, so because I want you to go bigger than big, and I know the leader has. I want it to be double whatever you're planning to do. I think not just cruise ships and airlines, broadcast is getting battered, but I also know the restaurant industry is probably the hardest hit industry, and you know the restaurant industry in Colorado and across the country is staggered.
That's exactly right. In Colorado, we know that 1 out of every 10 jobs is a restaurant job. The hospitality industry, hotels, ski resorts, the little mom and pop shop that rents skis in every community, these are shuttered. This is not something to go lightly. We have to do everything we can to pump the lifeblood back into this economy because they have done what our health experts have said we needed to do. We have to get this back on track. We cannot survive as a country without an economy. And so when we get this this spread taken care of and back on our feet, we have to make sure it's full charge ahead.
Now, Senator Gardner, I've got good friends in senior positions in the restaurant industry. They tell me that business interruption insurers are arguing that this does not count because it's not a physical disruption of fire or flood or that sort of thing. I believe the Congress can mandate that insurers cover this as business interruption and then rebate to the insurance companies. That would get money out immediately. They can argue later about whether it's covered, but if they know how to do that.
Those are absolutely conversations that are taking place. And, if these companies want to have customers left to buy their insurance policies, they better figure out a way to keep them in business. And that's exactly what we are trying to do. Yesterday's decision on the announcement by the majority leader on the small business interruption plan, a $300 billion pot of funding that would infuse immediately into small businesses, making sure that employees are paid, and then working with the small business to forgive that portion of the loan to get them through this is critically important. But you're right, business interruption insurance is one of those ways that could immediately provide relief, and they better wake up, and that is very much a part of the discussion.
Now, I've also been urging forward appropriation, by which I mean we know we need the B-21, we know we need the Columbia class, we know we need the F-35. We know how much they will cost overall for the entire production run. I would appropriate that total money and give it to Northrop Grumman and give it to Lockheed and give it to whoever's making the Columbia class, I can't remember the name of it, and just say it's under your stewardship. What a signal that would be. I call them thunderclaps. Are there any thunderclaps on the table? Things that we've never seen before that will make the economy realize this is a 2-month problem, and then we will all be back doing what we were doing, especially protecting the country.
I absolutely think there are. What you just identified is something that is important to show. And that's why I think what this bill has been unveiled, there's never been anything like this before. I mean, these are simplified, expedited processes to get real dollars out to real people immediately, not just to help with business, but to make sure that employees are paid, to make sure that workers get dollars on the table. We're cutting through red tape. The announcement yesterday by a new drug having been approved. These are things that are happening that we have to continue to push to make sure we get through this. And not just get through this, but come back roaring, because we're going to need that roar in order to get back to a semblance of where we were.
I don't want you to name any names, Senator, but do any of your colleagues seem not to get this? I saw that 500 employee limit, and I thought to myself, they do not understand. There are restaurant chains that have 100 locations and they employ 5,000 people, they're just as badly hurt as the restaurateur who opened last week. That 500 employee limit, that's just dumb. That's just dumb.
We've been arguing back and forth on that limit, on that number, and making that very point. We've also made sure that, okay, so if you do limit it at 500, or say you even limit it at 1,000, you're still going to have businesses that we can't let fall through the cracks because the government has asked them to shut down, basically. Now we have to be there for them to get through this. And so that's why the critical industries portion of funding and other provisions within the bill are there to make up those dollars and to get them back and going. So, we have to make sure that there is a portion of this bill for every sector. We start with the workers, the worker relief, the worker assistance. There are no employees without employers. And so we have to make sure that both of those two together are successful.
Now, Senator, I'm lobbying here. The business that I run, the Nixon Foundation, we only have 40 employees. We're fine. We'll be covered if I have to lay anybody off. I am worried about companies that employ 5 or 7 or 10,000 people who are going to have to lay off significant portions of their workforce because their income is down, and they will not be covered because you guys thought, they'll be fine. They are not fine. Everybody, it's not about the size of the employees. It's about who's lost revenue, whose revenue has been interrupted. That's the metric. And I saw that employee metric, and I thought, boy, they don't have any real business people up there.
And that's where that's where this critical industries funding item, this stabilization fund that is there, is going to come into play. I spent most of my time on the phone yesterday. I spoke to Secretary Mnuchin about that yesterday morning to make sure that is something that can cover restaurants, hotels, and others that don't fit into the small business stabilization fund. So you're exactly right, Hugh. We have to continue that conversation, get it right, and make sure that stays through this so that we don't have some kind of, if you're this size, you're going to be fine, but if you're that size, you're screwed.
No, I think I'm pretty fine, but I know the broadcast industry is not full of large companies like iHeart. I know it's got lots of mom and pop. Is broadcast, in your opinion, a critical industry?
Well, look, it's funny because I asked the secretary, I said, is this critical? Is that critical? Is that critical? I don't think there's anything in there that is not critical, if that makes sense. And so they named the fund Critical Industries, but I have yet to find something that's not going to be included in this in some way, shape, or another. So that's exactly right. We have to do this. I mean, the government and our health experts have asked every business to basically stop doing what they were doing. And when that happens, you can't turn around and say, well, I know it was tough, but good luck to you. You can't do that.
But I pause for a moment. Broadcast, or actually I should say advertising revenue-dependent businesses are staggered. They are critical in terms of the New York Times is fine, Netflix is fine, NBC is fine. Mom and pop radio stations are not fine. Our iHeart is fine, and a little group in Colorado of 4 stations, I'm sure you know who they are, they're not fine. So if we don't broadcast, this country is not free. We need a free and independent broadcast sector.
Well, and how do you get information out to all sectors of our state about what's happening, where to go, listening to the news? I mean, that's the role that broadcasters play. I mean, that is whether it's in Colorado, whether it's a tornado or a wildfire, or whether it's an unknown situation like we're in right now with a virus we can't see or feel or touch. Well, I guess you can, and that's the problem. But that's exactly why we have to make sure these industries are okay.
All right, I'll say one more time, broadcast, and then want to finish with restaurants. I can't stress enough. I looked at the numbers earlier. It's so many people. It's 1 in 10 Americans work in the restaurant business. The 1 in 10. And they're all shuttered. I did my long walk yesterday, did 8 miles yesterday because I'm self-isolating, and they're all shuttered. Unemployment insurance won't do it. They have rental payments to make. Are you aware and cognizant of that?
We are. In fact, I was on the phone yesterday most of the day with restaurateurs and hoteliers in Colorado talking about what would happen to them, the rent payments, how they structure their business. Early on, restaurants, they're a different type of business model in many cases than say, a farm equipment dealership like our family's business. But they have ownership groups and investors. Maybe somebody kicked in $5,000. Maybe John Elway kicked in $100,000. And so things like small business administration credit elsewhere provisions that prohibit restaurants from participating in a normal SBA loan program, you have to wipe out those disqualifications and make sure they're eligible for more. That's why we have to get this right.
Senator Cory Gardner, keep working. I hope you remain healthy. Your family remains healthy. Prayers for you and all concerned. I know you're doing the best for Colorado and the country, and I appreciate it. Don't go anywhere, America. Tarzana Joe is